One more thing. The Minnesota Timberwolves haven't faced a defense like the Dallas Mavericks yet. How can the Mavs make it hard for them? We'll talk about all that and more right now.
I'm here because I have to be here.
People forget about Frank.
That's it. It's me versus the machine. Don't let his lightness take away from his quickness.
You can rest later. You're young.
I'm Aaron Connors here.
Wait. One more thing.
Welcome. You're still locked into the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and your best friend covering the Dallas Mavericks on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, sometimes twice a day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. The Minnesota Timberwolves haven't faced a defense like the Mavs yet, and we've got some questions that need to be answered about how the Mavs are going to defend the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Western Conference Finals. Back again, feeling good, feeling the rhythm, feeling the rhyme. Come on, guys. Western Conference Finals time. Couple of things I want to get into. Can Maxi play? That's going to be a big thing. Does PJ take Towns or does he guard Gobert? Can the Mavs play Conley or Gobert off the floor? And there are various things that we can talk about with that. But I want to start here with this. Anthony Edwards is the talk of everybody. Everybody's feeling good about him. We talked about on the crossover with Ben Beacon yesterday. The Mavs are going to try to defend Anthony Edwards by funneling him to the rim. They've done that with all the other guards that they've faced so far in the playoffs. With James Harden, Paul George didn't accept it. He just decided to take a bunch of jumpers. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander accepted it, and he took a bunch of mid-range jumpers. The Mavs are going to force Anthony Edwards to take a bunch of mid-range jumpers. And I think he'll take those. And I think that that'll be a positive thing for the Mavericks. The one thing that I'm interested in is the Minnesota Timberwolves have taken more shots at the rim in the playoffs than in the regular season, which seems kind of wild to me. In the regular season, they took 34% of their shots at the rim. That was 11th in the NBA. In the playoffs, they've taken 37.6% of their shots at the rim. They're getting more shots at the rim in the playoffs than in the regular season against Phoenix and against Denver. So that's second, and only behind the Lakers, who just played, a little there. The Timberwolves are taking more shots at the rim, and so the Mavericks trying to funnel Anthony Edwards to the rim and having those rim protectors there. The Mavs rim protectors, better than Nurkic, better than Jokic at defending the rim. I just want to be clear about that. Them doing that, I think, will help them defend Anthony Edwards and will make Kyrie's job a little bit easier because he may be guarding Anthony Edwards, but it'll probably be Derrick Jones Jr. But I think there'll be cross matches. I think that they'll try to get switches to where Kyrie is guarding Anthony Edwards. Luka Doncic is going to be guarding Anthony Edwards. The switches happen. No player just guards one-on-one. Like, just because they assign Derrick Jones Jr. to Anthony Edwards, if you watch any of these other games, that doesn't mean that Derrick Jones Jr. will guard Anthony Edwards every single possession he's out on the court. It just won't happen. And so I'm curious to see if they continue to do that instead of sending the doubles. We haven't seen a lot of doubles from the Mavericks. We haven't seen them send two to the ball that often. We haven't seen them send, multiple guys to one ball handler and try and make that work. And so I'm very curious to see if that's the plan against Anthony Edwards. Ben Beacon talked about how the Suns would send multiple defenders to Anthony Edwards and try to make him lose that way, or try to make it tough for him that way. But instead, that opens up everything else for everyone else, and then all of a sudden you have to recover and all that. Mavericks have been kind of reluctant to do that, and so I'm very curious to see if that's the first thing I'm really looking for is how they defend Anthony Edwards, and it will change throughout the series. I'm sure if he starts torching them, they'll have to change it. If all of a sudden they realize, like what Denver realized that, hey, KCP is not going to be enough against Anthony Edwards. He's very good. And if they decide that Derrick Jones Jr. is not enough, maybe they change it up. Maybe they put PJ on him. Maybe they just decide to send multiple to the ball. I'm really curious to see how they do that. And I know that people are tired of us talking about Anthony Edwards already. It's been 3 days. But he's the thing that makes it work. He's the reason why they went from a play-in team to now a Western Conference Finals team. Their defense got better, and Anthony Edwards is a big part of their offense and their defense getting better. Huge. I think another big question to ask in this, can the Mavericks play Conley or Gobert off the floor? It'd be two different reasons, two very different reasons, but I think it could help the Mavericks in a lot of different ways. We didn't get to talk about Mike Conley a lot in the crossover with Ben Beacon from Locked On Wolves, but I think Mike Conley makes this team work a lot. He keeps them together. He keeps them composed. He keeps them, on the straight and narrow, basically. He is the I almost called him the gondola captain. He just has the big stick on the gondola, which is like those boats in Venice, and he's just pushing the big stick, and he's just like, we're just slowly going down this river, and as long as I'm here, we're going to continue to keep pushing down river. I don't know why gondola captain was the first thing. Are you even a captain of a gondola? Is that even a thing? But I think he's the captain of the ship in that way. He has that chemistry with, Ben Beacon did talk about the chemistry between him and Rudy Gobert, that D'Angelo Russell didn't have that. And so when Russell was the point guard, Gobert just didn't know what to do with the offense, basically, and it didn't work. But Conley makes it work. The Mavericks are uniquely positioned compared to the Suns or compared to the Nuggets in playing certain guys off the floor in that way. If Conley is going to be on the floor, and let's say Conley is guarding Derrick Jones Jr., he's just out in the corner. The Mavericks will call up Derrick Jones Jr. every single time to set a screen for Luka Doncic, to get that switch if the Timberwolves give it up, to get that switch so that Luka is now being guarded by Conley. And if they do that too many times, and all of a sudden Luka is just torching him and just killing him, which he's done before. He's done it to many players in the past. Then all of a sudden, can you play Conley? And if they can't play Conley, does that hurt their offense even more? That's one way I think that the Mavericks offense can also help the Mavs defense and make it even harder for the Minnesota defense. So it's all kind of working there to stop the Minnesota offense. And the Minnesota offense was 16th in the regular season, so nothing really to write home about, average. But they've been better in the playoffs, which is kind of wild. We talked about that in the crossover too. Can they play Conley off the floor? I think that would be a huge development for the Mavericks if they can not maybe even play him off the floor to where he just can't play at all, but to limit his minutes. You limit Conley's minutes, and then all of a sudden, you have one less playmaker. You have one less guy that keeps everybody composed on the floor. The floor general, the coach on the floor, that whole thing. That's going to be interesting. And I think that depends on if Luka can take advantage of the size and if the Timberwolves give up that switch. If they give up that switch, I think Luka can do it. And I think Luka can play him off the floor, or at least play him to a limited role. And I'm curious to see if that happens. The other one is, can the Mavericks play Gobert off the floor? That's another huge question. I think it's going to take Maxi playing to do that, to play the 5 out. Because when you play the 5 out, when you play 5 guys that can all shoot from 3, and you play everybody spacing the floor and Luka just playing in space, and all of a sudden it's Gobert versus Luka with just him. Just him out in space. That's when it gets really tough for Gobert. Now he's gotten better at that stuff. He's gotten better at defending in space. That's one of the big things he's improved on this season to make it harder to get himself played off the floor. But Luka could also get him into foul trouble. I think that maybe some of the Mavs bigs could get him into foul trouble, catching lobs and him trying to recover and do all that. I'm curious to see if they can play Gobert off the floor. And if the Mavs can, on offense, play Gobert off the floor, it makes them much better. Makes it much easier for them on defense for sure. I think that's going to be a real interesting thing to see if they can do. If they can play him off the floor. And I don't think they'll be able to do it unless they play Maxi. I think that's my one takeaway, and having sat and thought about this for a little bit, is, can they play Gobert off the floor? It's got to be a spacing reason. It's got to be because the Mavs spacing has been so good. They can play Maxi, they play those 5 outs, and all of a sudden they're like, Gobert just can't keep up. He can't keep up with all the different shooters. He can't recover on this enough. They're getting wide open shots all over the place. We've got to make a decision here, and we've got to pull Gobert and just allow Cat and Naz Reid to try and win this with their shooting on the other end too. I don't know that if the Mavs get into a shootout with the Timberwolves, who that helps. I think it's the Mavs. The Mavs 3-point shooting has not been that great, but the Timberwolves 3-point shooting it's been pretty good. Regular season, they only took like 32 attempts. So that was pretty low. That's 23rd in the NBA out of 30. And in the playoffs, they're only taking 32 as well, which is 10 out of 16. So they don't take a ton of threes, but they do hit their threes. They hit 38%, almost 39% of their threes in the regular season. That was third, and they're hitting about 36%, which is 8 out of 16 in the playoffs so far. So they're like middle of the pack 3-point shooting. So it probably does help the Mavericks. The Mavericks have been more successful shooting the 3 than the Timberwolves have. And so if they get in some kind of shootout, if Gobert gets played off the floor and all of a sudden they're doing the spacing game where, all right, our whole game plan is just to space the floor, get Gobert off the court, and just take one more defender off out of our way, then I think that probably benefits the Mavericks. But the Mavericks have also won these games where they just grind it out and it's 100-100 or 90-90 or whatever. They slow it down. They don't turn the ball over and all that. So those are the couple of big questions I'm asking. Coming up, let's talk about, does PJ Washington take Karl-Anthony Towns? Is this the key matchup for the entire series? We'll talk about all that and more coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook has all kinds of props and odds you can use to get in on the action, to check out what's available. You put down a $5 bet and you win. You get $150 in bonus bets. So go check that out on FanDuel and see what's available. They had the Timberwolves as just a slight favorite in the series last time I checked. Still a 4-point swing for game one. Minnesota -4. You've got that. And then it's -168 for the Timberwolves for the series, plus 142 for the Mavericks. So you have to bet $100 and you win $142 if the Mavericks win the series on FanDuel. Put down $5 on that, and I'm not doing the math for you. You got to figure that out. But I'll do this math. If you put down $5 and you win, you get $150 in bonus bets from FanDuel. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Thanks for hanging out with me again on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. If you want to support the show, text me, get text alerts from me during games, after games, extra content, things like that. Watch film with me. Subscribe to the subtext. Click the link in the description. Text the number on the screen or text the number in the description to get involved with subtext. All right, Isaac, let's get into the rest of this. Does PJ Washington take Karl-Anthony Towns? I think this is a really big matchup for PJ Washington and for Karl-Anthony Towns and for the Mavericks in general. I think if PJ Washington can out-quality play Karl-Anthony Towns, now he probably won't outscore him. He could. He put down 29 points and 27 points in the round before this. If the Timberwolves guarded him the same way that the Thunder guarded him, then he could put up more points than him. And if that's the case, then the Timberwolves are in trouble. But if PJ plays a more quality series than Cat, I think that the Mavs are in a really, really great spot. But one of the keys to the Thunder series was PJ Washington guarding Chet and guarding that center so that he didn't space them out and he didn't run them around and set screens and do all that. And the Mavs centers could stay back and stay by the rim. I don't think they'll do that in this series because of Gobert. Gobert being there allows the Mavericks to stay near him. Gobert being there allows him to stay near him by a hair. And the center will be able to stay next to Gobert. And the center will be able to defend the rim in that way. And then PJ is the one chasing around Cat, trying to guard him on the perimeter. And I think this is kind of a big win for the Mavericks compared to their regular season. This is one way that the Mavericks have gotten much better from their matchups against the Timberwolves in the regular season. We all know that there's nothing you can really take away from the regular season matchups that the Mavs had with the Timberwolves. Dwight Powell started one of them. Kyrie only played one of them. Luka only played 2 of them. There's really not a ton you can take away from these games, but I think that you can look at some of the ways the Mavs didn't have success and the ways that they've gotten better and say, you know what? It's pretty good. Having PJ instead of Grant Williams, it's going to be a big positive because you look at, I went back and I looked at all the shots Karl-Anthony Towns took against the Mavs. And God love Grant Williams. I was a believer. I thought that he would work. I was rooting for him, definitely. Karl-Anthony Towns was eating his lunch. He was eating his lunch. He was making him wear a cone of shame. He was beating him off the dribble. He was beating him on post-ups. He was beating him on, catch and shoot shots. I mean, he was just beating him all over the court in this. Karl Towns had 29 points in one game, 24 in another, 21 in another. He shot 73% on the game. He had 29 points, 50%, 57%. And then he had one bad one where he shot 25%. And the Timberwolves still won that game. But having PJ Washington to defend Karl-Anthony Towns is such a big advantage compared to where they were in the regular season when Grant Williams was trying to guard him. For all that Grant Williams could bring and potentially could bring and all that, whatever. He was not good on Karl-Anthony Towns. I'll just say that. He struggled against him. And also the Mavs also threw Derrick Jones Jr. on Cat a lot. Exum guarded him a lot. I think in the one game the Mavs won, I think Luka guarded Karl-Anthony Towns a little bit, and that will probably happen again because of switches and things like that. But I think that PJ guarding Towns is a big win for the Mavs compared to where they were. That's just my one big takeaway from that, is that the Mavs are in a much better position. And I do not think the Mavs will do the thing where PJ guards Gobert so that one of the centers guards Cat. I don't think that's advantageous to the Mavericks. In the same way that it was for the Thunder, I don't think that it will be for that. It allows the centers to stay in the paint. It allows the Mavericks to do what I said at the beginning, to funnel Ant to the rim, and to maybe he gets dissuade from going to the rim, or maybe he just takes Gafford's head off a couple times on dunks. But it dissuades him from just going to the rim, dissuades him from jacking up a bunch of threes, and it just makes him a mid-range assassin. You've got to beat us from the mid-range. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander couldn't do it. And if I don't think SGA could do it from mid-range, I don't think Anthony Edwards can either, because SGA is a better mid-range shooter. Now, the Timberwolves have other answers besides what the Thunder did. But I think that's what they'll try to do. And I think it comes from PJ guarding Cat, and I think that all kind of makes that work. Can Maxi play? We talked about this with playing Gobert off the floor, but if Maxi can play, and people keep asking for updates. Believe me, I would tell you if there are updates. I am definitely motivated to tell you if there are updates on Maxi Kleber. He was on the treadmill the other day. He was shooting in practice the other day, and I don't think there are a lot of updates about if Maxi can play or not. If there are, I'll definitely give them to you. But if he can play, which he was projected to be able to play in this series if the Mavs moved on, when the injury first happened, so things could happen between then and now. But if he's able to play, that's huge for the Mavs because they need that size and they need that switching on defense. To be able to play a Towns Naz Reid lineup, a Gobert Naz Reid lineup, even the Gobert Cat lineup sometimes, you want some size there. Jaden McDaniels is a big guy too. Anthony Edwards can get up and he can grab some rebounds. The Mavs are not going to have a rebound advantage in this series. So I think for defensive purposes, if the Mavs have Maxi, that's a huge win. They need the lineups to defend the size of the Timberwolves and then the spacing to potentially play Gobert off the floor in some way. And I'm very excited to see, I would be very excited to see if Maxi could play, what this team would look like. They were really missing him in the Thunder series. They needed that one extra guy to add some size, to add some spacing, to hit some open shots. And if they had him, could have been a shorter series. Mavs still got it done. The Mavs still found ways to win. I think they can in this Timberwolves series if they don't have Maxi either. But I think it would be very helpful to have that. They've played all these super healthy teams. The Timberwolves are going to be another team that's just super healthy. And the Mavs are missing one of their key role players, one of their key guys off the bench. And if Maxi can play, I think it changes the series a lot for the Mavs. Gives them a lot of extra options, gives them a lot of extra things to look at. The Timberwolves, I mentioned their shot diet earlier, and I just thought this was interesting. Maybe you will too. They're taking more shots at the rim. They went from 34% of their shots in the regular season to 37%. That's a big jump. They're taking more shots at the rim. So if the Mavericks can dissuade that, I think that is a win for the Mavs. It makes the Timberwolves have to change what they want to do. They're taking no shot. They didn't take any shots at the short mid-range, like anything that the 10-foot kind of floater stuff that Luka tries to take. They took 23% of their shots there, which is third in the NBA. It's just not a lot. They take a lot of their shots there, 23%, sorry. They take a lot of their shots there. But they're taking less in the playoffs. They're taking about 20% instead of 23%. So they're taking more shots at the rim, less from that 10 to 15 range, and because they're getting to the rim. Like all those shots that they used to take from that short mid range are becoming rim shots. And so rim shot, but so if the Mavs can dissuade them from going to the rim a little bit more, maybe they take more of those short mid-range, and maybe it's just they have to beat you from the mid-range. And how many players on the Timberwolves can actually do that? Ant, absolutely. Towns, probably. Gobert, no. Jaden McDaniels, not really. Conley, maybe a little floater here and there. The Timberwolves are they're taking more corner threes in the playoffs. In the regular season, they took about 11% of about 10.7% of their threes from the corner. And they're taking 11.5%. So almost 1% more of their shots are coming from the corner threes. And so that's something to watch out for too. If the Mavs if they funnel Ant, but then they also decide to send some help, if they send it off the corners like the Thunder did to the Mavericks, that's something to watch for too. Because they don't take a lot of threes, but they will knock them down. And they will take the ones that are advantageous to them. So Timberwolves are taking more shots at the rim. Mavs need to dissuade that. The Timberwolves are taking less mid-range shots in the playoffs, and they're taking the least amount of mid-range shots in the playoffs. The total mid-range. They're only taking 27% of their shots from mid-range. That's 20th out of the 20 teams. That even counts the play-in teams. So they're not taking a lot of mid-range shots at all, and I think that there's a reason for that. I don't think they want to take those shots. So the Mavs can force them to run them off the three-point line, dissuade them from the rim, make them take those mid-range shots. That's a win for the Mavs, and that's what the Mavs defense will try to make them do. It's what the Mavs made the Thunder do. That's the shot diet. That's what I think that the Timberwolves will try to do on offense. Their half-court offense, I noted that it was in the regular season, it was 99.8 points per 100 possessions, which was 12th out of 30 teams. So it was a little better than their regular offense, but it's gone up a point. They're now at 100.9 points per 100 possessions. That's 5th out of 16 teams in the playoffs, according to Cleaning the Glass. So their half-court offense has been better. They've been a better team in general. And Minnesota hasn't played terrible half-court defenses. The Nuggets were 5th in half-court defense in the regular season. The Suns were 11th. They were not known as a great defense, but they had a pretty good half-court defense. So I think that the Timberwolves have not played a defense like the Mavericks, but they haven't played complete scrubs yet either. That's the thing to also remember. It's not just going to be this. I don't think the Timberwolves would be completely shell-shocked by how good the Mavericks defense is. It'd be great if they were. It'd be really great if they were, but I don't think that's going to be the case. There you go. That's one more thing. Let me know what you think about the one more thing. I'm going to try to do these a little bit more. I've always got something extra after the show. Like I plan for a whole bunch in the show during the day, and then I'm like, all right, let me just do the one more thing for Isaac. And yeah, let me know if you like this format. Basically the same as the show, just a little extra. It's one more thing. But let me know if you like it in the comments below on YouTube. And then keep subscribing. We'll be back with more part 2 of the crossover with Ben Beacon. I'll do a one more thing for tomorrow. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked on Mavs. One more thing.
I'm here because I have to be.
People forget about Frank.
That's it. It's